these people are
Hey, most business owners don't reach out because things are broken. They reach out because something just broke. A key employee quits, cash flow tightens, clients start slipping. The owner is exhausted and doesn't know where the business actually stands. Today, we're talking about the real cost of waiting until something breaks and why prevention in business isn't about doing more, it's about designing smarter. Hey, welcome. My name is Jeff Harrison, along with my co-host,
Leslie Spoor.
Leslie Spoor, and we are the Twisted, Bent, and Exhausted team here on this podcast, as it says right down below, Twisted, Bent, and Exhausted Entrepreneur Podcast. Leslie, how are you this morning?
I am quite well, thank you. How about yourself?
Good. I am excited about talking about this topic because, it's interesting that you, and I got to give full props here. She came up with this topic today, and I don't know if she was like walking around my house or whatever, but there's some things that needed to be happening. And today, while I was out, and I'm a pickleball player, so I was out early this morning, and one of the guys there is someone who is, he repairs, he's not a handyman. He deals with doors. And one of our doors going to our downstairs room doesn't shut properly. And I keep promising my wife I'll fix it. I keep trying to I can't figure the sucker out. So I finally said, Steven, can you come fix? He said, yeah, I can be there today. I'm like, yes. So, but I put it off. So today we're going to talk about this fun thing about being reactive versus a proactive business.
That's right. Yeah. This is something I see all the time with business owners where they come to me with a problem, and the solution is often very simple and something they could have done far in advance before they had this problem. So, and it can be any problem, not specific to one instance or another, but proactive businesses, if you take the time to really think through your business and anticipate what could happen, particularly after you've been in business for a couple of years, then you can avoid a lot of this emergency anxiety and stress.
Well, it's one of those things where decisions get postponed when nothing is on fire. And I think about if you're familiar with a thing called the X Prize, and this is something that Peter Diamandis started 25 years ago, where people would say, hey, we have a problem we want to solve. Well, one of the problems, of course, he lives in California here on the coast. And he said, we want to try to put out an X Prize that says within 5 minutes of a forest fire being detected by 6 foot by 6 foot, that it dispenses something that will put it out. And it just goes to show that, hey, it can, when it's caught early, it's easier to deal with. Isn't that true, Leslie?
Absolutely true. Like I said, there's only one way to run a business. So, and people will argue with me and they'll say, that's not true. Everybody's business is different. No, their business, their product, their services, that might all be different. But how you run that business doesn't deviate. There are industry best practices. There are benchmarks that you can implement. There are tools that you can use that will help people be more efficient. Now, I was working with somebody the other day, and they have, for example, in systems, they have 5 disparate systems, and they're working well for the amount of clients and stuff that they have. But their goal is to grow. And once they get even a few more clients, all these separate individual processes that they have to follow become extremely cumbersome and much more difficult to manage. So I showed them that you could do this with one solution and have at a minimum as much tracking and stuff as they have, and at a maximum, a much more efficient system to work from that will satisfy their needs as they grow and continue to be easier and easier, which is really what you want to look for. But they were just having a problem with so much unbillable time and so much, remembering to do this and remembering to do that. And so she was asking me, how do I fix this problem? And that's real common in today's world because there are so many applications out there, so many promises of I can be your next solution. And really, you don't need all of that stuff. You just trying to pick the best ones is hard.
Well, often, Leslie, and you know this about me, in the world I live in, AI, every day, literally, and sometimes throughout the day, a new version of what I just started using will come out. And it feels like I kind of feel like a toad. I'm jumping from lily pad to lily pad, and it's like,
Yeah.
at what point can we just say, hey, let's use this and go forward? And the
I got a
challenge is,
visual. I got a visual. But go
yeah,
ahead.
the challenge is because some of these models that we use, they keep advancing. And where ChatGPT is an example, it leads in all these benchmarks, and then Gemini comes out and everybody says, oh, I've changed everything to Gemini from ChatGPT. And I'm like, I've got now years of
Yeah.
activity on that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can change that over. And it becomes a challenge. How do we deal with that?
You stick with where you're at. I think you need to pick an application and stick with it, because one way or the other, everything's going to catch up with the other one, right? And then ChatGPT will have a feature that's better than Gemini, and then Gemini will come out with something that's better, and it'll constantly talk about leapfrogging. It will constantly evolve so that they can all keep up with each other. And I think the key to any AI application, if we're going to talk about that, is that you have to educate it to be to help you specifically. They were talking about that yesterday at BNI a little bit, and they were saying that they like it, but sometimes the answers they get aren't right. Well, no, because they haven't taken the time to teach it their own voice, their own product line, their own services, their own um, uh, blogs and things that they create already. If you take the time to teach it that, I used to say, learn my voice, and load things in there, then it gets to know you. And then the more content you create, the more you use it, the better it does for you. Now, I will say this morning, I was just thrilled. I was going to tell you this earlier. I was just thrilled with ChatGPT. And I happen to use that one because I started with that when it first came out, and I'm not leaving it, because to transfer everything is a nightmare. But I got up this morning, came in my computer, and the thing had crashed in the middle of the night.
Mm.
It said computer has experienced a problem and had to stop, and then it was frozen, and it had a kernel error on the screen. So this is what failed, this kernel error. So I took a snapshot of it, got the system rebooted, and then I typed it in the chat. I said, okay, this is what happened. What does this mean, and how do I fix it? Because when you get a blue screen, or in my case, a black screen, but remember the blue screens, it meant catastrophic failure.
The death screen.
Your heart just seizes when you see that, right? Because all your life is on that computer. So, so it said that this is a real common failure. Doesn't mean I did anything wrong, thank goodness. It was sort of a conflict between needing to do an update and where it was sitting at the time. And of course, I have like 10,000 files open at any tabs open at any given time. So, excuse me. So it gave me all the steps to do, and then it said, "Well, is it a laptop or a desktop?" And I told him it was a laptop, and it came back and said, "Even easier, do these things." So I copied them out and saved it so I can do it later when I'm not in the middle of the day and make sure that everything is okay. But it's nice that there's a resource you can go to without a lot of searching that does have the internet's worth of knowledge that can help you.
Yeah.
So far, it hasn't steered me wrong. So I really like that.
Well, what's funny is we're talking about decisions get postponed when nothing is on fire. I think some of those things, as an example, I have my water heater scheduled to be flushed, and the one I had before, and I think this is the third year, maybe second or third year I've had this, and so it's fairly new. And the manufacturer recommends that you flush it once a year.
Right.
But what's interesting is I didn't flush the one I had, and it lasted, based on when I bought the home, or when the home was born, if you will, it lasted almost 30 years without doing that. And I didn't see anything happening as far as the water not being taken care of. But the deal was, because it wasn't maintained, by the time it did go out, it had so much sediment in it that it was popping and cracking and whatnot. And because just my wife and I, we don't use a lot of hot water, not like a four-person family or whatever, but it probably would have lasted another 10 years had I maintained it.
Right.
So
that's absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah. So that makes me start thinking of like, okay, what else, and we talk about our business is like, what else needs to be maintained and not postponed. And I try to do more and more of that on a daily basis. Like, the old saying is only handle that piece of paper once, only open
Right.
that email once kind of thing. Easy to say, not always easy to do, but I'm trying to let that come in as a filter nowadays. Is that a good step?
Yeah, it is. But today, and actually I took this whole topic and did a newsletter for executive errands because this applies to taking care of your home, just like you're talking, and it applies to your business, right? Which is what we're talking about today. So yes, absolutely, there should be a list of things to maintain in your home and also a list for your business, procedure updates. You know, the people who are smart enough to at least create them, that's a good thing. But if you don't have a policy to go back and review them
Mm.
on a specific frequency and update them as your business evolves, eventually they become useless because things change.
They're just outdated, right?
Right, it's just outdated. You've changed the way you're doing business. You've changed something about how you interface with clients. Maybe you changed the system you're using to track your data. Could be any number of things. So policies and procedures need to be reviewed on a specific frequency and keep them current. There are also revenue issues. I took my um, last year's P&L and I ran it through AI and said, because I verified first that it does not retain any of that data, right? It's not available for anybody else snooping around. But I said, analyze this and tell me where I could be more efficient, does this amount of money, do these expenses seem logical for the amount of revenue we're generating, all of this stuff. And it came back with some really good suggestions and observations about how we were running the business financially, which really helped. And I think that should be something that you do quarterly to just make sure that you catch something before it becomes a bigger problem.
Well, uh, if I could just hit you right on that, I think we're a couple things. One is, I think ChatGPT, or let's call it the AI models, whether it's Gemini, Anthropic, Grok,
That's why I just
whatever.
said AI, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where a lot of people are becoming armchair quarterbacks. And so what happens is they will do what you're just talking about, and they'll grab, let's say, ChatGPT and throw the P&L in there, and without telling it what to do, without
Oh no,
having
you
the
have to
knowledge
tell
behind
it.
it.
Right.
And what'll happen is it'll come back with something that will be very vague, very broad, because that's what it's going to do first. And then it's like, oh, that quarterback shouldn't have done that. The coach shouldn't have done that. In other words, they'll qualify it as it didn't do a very good job. And we set it up for failure. And I think, and I don't mean that's a bad thing. That's part of, I'm going to call the evolution of adding this into your life, is we're going to use it the easiest way we can. And that's just to open it up and type in something or talk it in and just say one thing. And we forget to say, wait a second, if I'm going to get my taxes done, I am not going to go to my neurosurgeon,
Right,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
I'm going to go to my accountant. And
Yeah.
so you have to tell it the role and give it some context, and then give it content, and then have some conversations with it. So I think that's part of the issue. And then, the other part is when you talk about revenue, um, and I've been guilty of this. And I have a friend who, about 5 years ago, I thought his business was doing really well. He thought his business was doing well. It was doing 7 figures. And he said, and then one day he like shut things down. I'm like, whoa, what happened? He said at the end of the year, he said the only people making money are the people like his vendors. That's the only people who'd made money. He said, I could have worked at 7-Eleven or a convenience store and made more money than what I did here. So sometimes revenue masks inefficiency. Leslie, how can systems and what you're talking about today, how can we catch that before it becomes a problem?
Well, I was going to say that, yeah, I did put a prompt in there, a very long prompt actually about, you've got an account CPA level knowledge, you know what you're doing. We want to look for margins and, they have what they call ad backs in business. And so you can that's money that you can kind of use that's sketchy from is it a business expense? Is it a personal, that's just right on the edge of okay.
It's a gray area.
It's a gray area. It's a gray area. So you want to be able to identify holes and what you could cut your expenses on, right? Or am I making a purchase that is unnecessary for my business? And so that was the kind of things I was looking for. And so sometimes revenue can be high, but like you said, your profitability may be very low. I work with people in the 5-day challenge that say, well, I'm making, and they're pretty modest. They're like making a couple $100,000 a year. But when I look at what they're putting into, what are their fixed costs to make that? How much are you paying yourself? How much do you pay your employees? Yeah, they've got a couple $100,000 a year they're making, but when you break it all down and put it into buckets, they aren't making very much money. I've got one person who's paying 50% of their hourly rate to the employees that work for them.
Wow. Ouch.
That is not enough. That's unburdened. That's just the straight cost of the labor. So if you don't add in burden, how much you paying for insurance, how much are you paying if you provide any benefits. She has employees and not 1099 help. So she's also paying a portion of taxes and a whole bunch of other things. And so, like, if you don't take the time to analyze how you're dispersing that money, you can think that you're doing really well, but in fact, you're not. So it's not about the gross number, and it's not really about the net number either. It's about the numbers in between and what are your margins. And so you really need to look at that closely if you want to be a profitable business for the long term. And again, it comes down to, am I building a business for myself, or am I building a job for myself, or am I building a business? We talk about that quite a bit, right? Because if you're building a job for yourself and you're doing the work and your growth is limited by what you're able to do, then you have cleaner numbers as far as, okay, I don't have as high of a burden. My overhead is not so high. My revenue is more accurately my revenue. But when you start adding support and delegating and having non-billable administrative support, which you need if you're going to grow, then that revenue number, that gross number, is not necessarily as accurate. It's accurate, but it doesn't represent what you think it does.
It can really create a delusion, can it?
Yeah, that's a better way of saying it. Thank you. Yeah, it can create a delusion that you think that you're super profitable when in fact you're really not.
Yeah.
So that
Here's
is one of the issues.
Here's another one, Leslie, is owners normalize exhaustion. Like it's like, well, it's a badge of honor. I'm supposed to work like crazy. And again, it takes us back to being reactive instead of proactive in business.
That's
I
right.
mentioned many times I play pickleball, and sometimes I'll play with people who are not very fast. And so what'll happen is they will be slow to react instead of being proactive and being in the place where they should be. And many times we lose the point, or they miss the shot because they're reacting instead of proactively being in position. How does that work in business when we're talking about this reactive and proactive, when it talks about exhaustion?
Well, what happens is when we start a business, there's a lot to do in the beginning. I mean, well, there's always a lot to do, but especially the first couple of years. You're wearing all the hats. You've got to go out and network. You got to market. You got to talk to people. You got to build relationships. You have to do the work. You have to get clients. I mean, there's just so much stuff to do. You have to create procedures and forms and just a ton of stuff. And you're always tired, which thus the name of our podcast, Twisted, Bent, and Exhausted, because small business owners are always one of those three or all of those three combined. And so it becomes expected. You don't think that it's anything wrong with it because, well, I started my own business. This is the price I pay. I'm going to have to be tired all the time. I've taken to going to bed at like 8 o'clock at night. I don't know what happened. I turned 68 and I just can't stay up anymore. But you know what I mean is like they just always they think it's normal to be tired, and it isn't normal to be tired. Again, it comes back to what is your plan for your business? What is your vision? And then how do I implement that? And how do I cut off or anticipate how to get rid of that exhaustion? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, do I need to hire help? Do I need to outsource something? Do I need to hire somebody? Can I get a virtual assistant? Or do I need to have somebody in person? A lot of my friends my colleagues and friends are doing virtual assistants these days because we no longer have to be in the same city or room or office as somebody else. We can do a lot of stuff without that. Time zones can be a challenge when you're on two different time zones, but still, you can work it out. And so you need to find a way so that you're not tired. Now, I know we talked about this an episode or two ago about balance and busyness is a bad term and all of that stuff. But the truth of the matter is that running a company, a business, takes effort. And so you need to anticipate that as part of your strategy when you're deciding how I want to run the business and start it, and think, okay, for 2 years, I'm going to give it all I got. I know most businesses fail in the first 2 years. I know what I need to do. I've gotten guidance. I have a coach, right? And so now I need to plan for that. And then I know that, and then at the 18-month, 2 year mark, I'm going to bring on somebody to do these tasks. And as you go through that process, you identify tasks that can be delegated so that you know that you won't have to do them forever. For me, remember, I've told you a million times, for me, it was finance. I technically am not a finance person. I understand finance well enough to run a company, but that's not my area of expertise. So I had to get a bookkeeper right away and an accountant so that they could handle that part for me so that I didn't break something. And I meant break something like physically break my computer, not break my business, but literally throw the computer across the room because I was so sick of doing, one at a time manual transactions. Now everything I have is automated, but still at that time I was doing one at a time. Enter a credit card, charge the invoice, send it, receipt. I mean, it was just like, ugh, pull out all my teeth. I just hated it. So you need to make sure that you have those plans in place.
Well, another one is and this is so true. I call it kicking the can down the road. Is I'll fix it when I have time. It becomes the rule instead of the exception. There are times where you say, I can't do this right now. I'll do it another time. But when you're doing it all the time, it just becomes the rule. You kind of set precedents. And if you have staff, you're probably training them to do the same thing. So it's like that dysfunctional family, only it's your business.
Right.
How do we do that so that we can break that cycle of chaos?
Well, for me, I'll give you an example of how that happened to me. I started creating forms and documents early on for my business, and I'm not a graphic artist, so they were adequate, but they weren't very fancy or brand specific. Excuse me, and they weren't. I wasn't able to update them. I kept thinking I'll do that when I get time to do it. And I was 10 years, 15 years down the road. I've been in business 20. So I was about 10 years down the road before I actually got somebody in my office who could do that. And not only did they update and standardize all my forms, but they also made them all electronically fillable and brought them into the current century and, all that kind of stuff. And that's because your business language is you're running so fast that you have to choose what's the priority. And so that was not my priority, even though it needed to be done. And because the benefit is the value clients perceive when they see your forms and things. When you're going to onboard a client and they see that you've thought of all the questions and you've got all the layout and it looks like your business and everything is hunky-dory, they get a subliminal sense of efficiency and credibility and this company knows what they're doing, kind of a thing. So from just a general business perspective, if you can try to identify those things that you keep saying, well, I'll fix it when I get back, when I can, you need to make a list of those as you go so that you can bring in somebody to help you with it or schedule a time just to do that, so that you can keep up. I was lucky. I was able to bring in somebody that could do that, but not everybody has that luxury. So you have to find a way, or you have to get somebody you can talk to so they can help you identify those things that need to be. I coach people all the time that I had somebody recently that only had one source of revenue really, and it was emergency services. And the problem with that, you think, oh, that's nice and noble, and you can be Johnny on the spot and help people. It satisfies my personal hero complex. But the but the problem with that is that the revenue is unpredictable. You can't gauge your cash flow or depend on it because it's always based on an emergency. And there were no other revenue streams. So you have to, if you're going to grow a business, you have to have more than one revenue stream. And that's not something you can wait to fix. That's something you need to fix right now. And your website needs to reflect it. You need to evolve your services to accommodate it, or your products. Find a need and fill it. Emergency support is very, very important, but there's also regular routine things you can do to keep that cash flow up. And so you don't want to have that.
Well, the other thing is, when emergencies are expensive teachers in
Oh,
business.
yeah, that's true.
And I remember a former client in the HVAC business, and he told me a story one time of what happened at someone's home when he went there, and it was literally a comedy of errors that were stacked upon one another, trying to make their air conditioner work, and eventually it went sideways, and that's a very expensive thing. Whereas in the beginning, had they just come out, it called them when it first had a problem, they said they could have fixed it pretty easily under a couple of $100. But by the time they did call them, because of all these other things they did, it cost them a new air conditioning, $14,000-15,000.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's not uncommon, is it? Because as an example, you know, I'll use this door as an example. I could screw around with a little bit door that I was mentioning earlier about adjusting the door so it closes in our house. And I could keep screwing around with it and break it, put a hole in the door. And now I've got to pay for a new door instead of saying, wait a minute, just like you said with the accounting. It's not that you don't know how to do it, although I don't know how to do the door thing, it's not my expertise. Let's get somebody
right,
in there. He's going to be in it. He'll probably be in and out in an hour.
right,
And all of a sudden now I'm out of hot water with my wife.
right.
Well, at least temporarily.
Until
So
you get your hot water heater serviced.
yeah, until the next one. So and that's next week. So yeah,
Well,
I think emergencies are very expensive teachers in business.
well, they are, because like if somebody will call me up and say, my best employee just quit on me.
Mm,
Now what do I do? Well, do you have a backup set of resumes of people you've already talked to? No. Well, now you're in a bad situation because you have to support your clients, and now you've got to hire somebody, and you won't have time to properly vet them.
yeah.
And if you don't vet them properly, you could get a criminal or an alcoholic or somebody who's bipolar, all three of which has happened to me. So I know what it's
Hopefully not
like
all
to,
at the same time.
no, no. Well, a couple of them were together, but generally they were all separate. I mean, 20 years, you got to know that occasionally you hire somebody that's a bad apple, right?
Yeah.
And then some of them are really good at hiding this stuff. So, and then once you get one, say they're bipolar, you can't let them go for that either. So,
Mm,
not in California anyway. So you have to let them burn themselves out. But what I'm saying is that if you have an emergency labor issue, now you've got to hire somebody right now, and you don't have the luxury of trying to go out and vet somebody and build a relationship and see if they're truly a good fit for you. We always have potential new hires do ride-alongs so
mm.
that they can see what the job is like and see if they like it before we spend all the money training them. Because the people that work for me have a lot of responsibility, and I need to make sure they're up to the task. And so that means that they like the job, that they are detail oriented, that they're good with a computer. I mean, there's certain things they have to have, and if I have to hire somebody in a hurry, I can't I can't do that, which then costs me all of that. It cost me the training, could cost me relationships, could cost me in lots of different ways. The other thing is that, say you hire, I'm just using the hiring as the example of an emergency for the purpose of this podcast, but say you do rush and hire somebody and they seem good in the short term, but then you find out later that the job they were doing was really, really poor. You didn't audit them, you weren't doing a follow-up, they were communicating properly. It looked like they were doing the right thing. And then later, once they've left and you go behind them and check and you find out, oh my God, these things are all wrong. And this could hurt me with my client. And what if they had come into town and saw this? Oh my God, it'd be terrible. So if you take the time to develop some resumes, hold them back, you do have to update them every year or so. You can't just assume somebody's still going to be available. But if you take the time to run ads when you don't really need people and sort of talk to some people and get people lined up, you can avoid a lot of pain. And that's same with having computer systems or documents and procedures or building a good face for your business. These things become important for sure when there's an emergency, right? When you have to do damage control, nobody likes to do damage control. And actually, or say like billing. I know somebody who bills only in arrears, right? And so every payroll, they're in a panic because they have to front the cost of payroll.
Yeah.
Trying because they haven't gotten paid. And I'm like, why are you doing it? It's a service. It's like having a gas credit card, for crying out loud. I hate gas credit cards because at the end of the month you get a bill and you have nothing for it. It's already all been used. So I don't like it. But when you sell time, that's exactly what you're doing. You're selling time, in my case. And so at the end of the month, they got to pay the bill. And I don't want to wait and chase them for the money. It costs way more to chase money than it does to just pay a credit card fee.
Certainly does.
I can show the math. Okay, it just costs more. So I've been convincing people that I work with to bill in advance, at least something in advance, so they have a portion of their expenditures covered. That way, they don't get stuck for 60 days instead of 30 or 90 days instead of 60 days. The stress and the burden of carrying all of that like the screen says, it compounds instead of getting resolved. Where if you bill in advance, even for part of the time, then you reduce that stress and reduce those problems to a just merely insignificant level.
Yeah, I think about this whole thing about compounding instead of resolving. It's almost like, I was born in Colorado and lived in the north for a while until I was about 14 or 15 years old. And if you saw a car that had rust on the outside, it didn't start from the outside. It started from the inside out. And they said, by the time you see it on the outside, it's almost too late to fix it. Right. Well, that's kind of this compounding. By the time it starts rusting and you see it on the outside, there's a lot of rust underneath there, or there's no foundation. And right. So I think it's important, as you say, if you can catch this, just like we went back to the very beginning, if you can catch that fire when it's 6 foot by 6 foot in a forest, you can stop it from burning the whole forest down. Right. And so I think that is so important to try to catch it early on. And I think, this next part, because I think right away, Leslie, we've been talking about, hey, these are the problems if you're reactive instead of proactive as a business owner, but really now what quiet prevention looks like in a business. So kind of taking some of that off their shoulders. And something I think I always admire you about is you have clear systems.
I do. I have everything automated that can be automated. Well, I should say I have all of the critical processes automated. There's a lot more automation I would like to do just because I'm sort of like somebody else I know. I never stop designing things. How is the content accelerator coming?
It's done. We're installing it this week.
Oh, yay, good. Yep. Yay, good. So yeah, you absolutely need clear systems. You need to know what applications you're going to use, and have one is preferred over. Now, I used to run my business off of my software, a calendar app, and my accounting software. That's all I used, right? Now I just use my system, which now has the calendar built into it, and an accounting system, because you have to have a way to track all your P&L. So I have everything in one spot. I don't need supplemental applications. I keep, like tasks. The worst thing that can happen if you've got a to-do list for a client is for you to miss something, right? Because now you've got to do damage control again. And if something falls through the cracks, then you're not a very good business if you can't pay attention to the details. So, we keep track of all of that. You need to understand very clearly how your business operates. And it needs to operate in a way that supports, the workflows need to support how you do business so that it's efficient. I used to teach people when I first started hiring them that when they were planning their workload for the week, A, we front loaded the week, right? And B, we didn't do what I called starfish planning. And that means you get in the car and you drive to this client and then to that client and then to this client, and then you end up driving in a star pattern, right? You want to do a very clean circle so that you are, and I try to avoid left-hand turns if ever possible. So that's, UPS does that. Did you know that? They
Yep.
avoid left-hand turns because it takes longer to stop and wait to make a left-hand turn than it does to make a right-hand turn. So they plan their routes for only right hands, or as much as possible. And I taught my people the same thing. Plan your day in a logical sequence. And we even have that automated so that the cities are broken up into logical areas. The next thing, obviously, is processes. And I don't know how many times we've talked about this. I'm just a nag about having documented processes. It will set you apart from other similar companies because most people do not take the time to do it. And if you're running a company like mine, my Executive Errands, I already have all this stuff documented and offer it to you as a baseline. You can adopt what you want, you can modify what you want, but at least you can start with a baseline of procedures to help you hit the ground running, you know. So, but if you don't have any and you're not in this industry, in the lifestyle management industry, then by all means, I can still help you. I can teach you what kind of format to put them in. I can take a look at your business with you through a 5-day challenge and say, okay, these are the things you need to document first, because you absolutely need to do this. And most of what I think is important is anything that requires training. Anything that you're teaching somebody else to do needs to be documented. And that's because you want them to operate the way you want them to, so that you can control your quality and credibility as they move through the business. So whether that's this is my beginning of the month billing practices, or these are the things I check every week, or this is how my employees operate, whatever those are. Next are defined roles and responsibilities, and those are having job descriptions. How many small business owners do you know, Jeff, that have job descriptions for their help?
Yeah, when you say small business owners, I'm going to say probably under 20 employees or maybe even under 10 employees. I'd probably say, probably single digits at best,
Yeah.
under
You,
10%.
yeah. How do you hire somebody if you don't know what they're going to do? Right. So you need,
Well, when you hire, the small business owner typically, let's just use as an example, the average small business owner is two or three employees. And so it's one of those things, and this was a challenge for me when I went from working for a small golf industry place to a larger corporation. And I needed to, and I'm not kidding you, needed to change the light bulb. That wasn't in my job description. So I wasn't allowed to change the light bulb because I hadn't been trained on it. I'm like, are you out of your mind? But then I saw that the process and the job descriptions, that was necessary. But I think sometimes it's like you hire somebody and then it's almost like, well, whatever needs to get done, Leslie, everybody does it. So why write it down?
no, you need to write it down. If for no other reason than you understand what it's supposed to be. It's okay if you want to engage in a little chaos. I'm okay with that. But you need to know, because again, if you're putting a job ad out, you need to tell somebody what the qualifications are that you're looking for. And how do you know what those are if you don't know what the job roles are in your business? I mean, most of us, most of the companies I've been working with have been in business anywhere from 6 to 12 years right now. Those are the companies I've been working with. And they have anywhere from 1 or 2 people helping them to 5, generally. And so the ones who have only a few people helping them have somebody in an admin role to help offload their workload, right? The owner's workload, and maybe somebody to help them with clients. If you're in retail, then maybe they're working the cash register or stocking the shelves or something. Those still have tasks associated with them, and you still need to be clear about what those are. That doesn't mean, I used to put at the bottom of my job descriptions, because I used to work as a consultant, I was heading up operations groups in companies that had unions. And nothing teaches you better how to write a job description than working in a union. I can tell you that. And so I used to write the job, because if it isn't in there, they would not let you do it, right? So I would put at the bottom, and other tasks as assigned. And they approved them all, and I got that through, so that I could ask people to do whatever I wanted, because they couldn't argue with it. Then it was in their job description, or other tasks as requested, or whatever. So there are ways around it, but you still should have an idea, even as a small couple person business, of who's doing what, when, and how you want them to do it. I think that's important. If you don't, they get all helter-skelter.
Yeah, and I think the other part of this is, and I don't want to gloss over it, is also accountability. What does right look like? So that they say, okay, it's like the old saying is like the parents ask their child to clean their room, and the perception of the child clean room versus parent clean room are grossly different.
Yeah.
But that's because the parents had expectations, but they were unmet because they weren't documented. It wasn't demonstrated. So I think having, whether, like I use video a lot to train my staff, and then I'll use images. This is what it should look like, so that they can then benchmark up against that and say, oh, I can see the difference. That's not what I want to do. Let me go back and do that. So I think accountability is also important when you let them know what right looks like. Otherwise, it almost feels like you're constantly, a fire chief, and you're putting out fires because you didn't set that. You told them, hey, this is what I want you to do. I want you to clean your room, but I didn't tell you what clean room looked like. And so I think that accountability is real important.
Well, the only person whose opinion matters in this situation is the person that, yes, it's the owner, it's the parent, it's, because you created a business, you built a home in your metaphor. You built a home, and you want those rooms clean to your specifications. Now, a 5-year-old may not be able to meet that, but you can certainly teach them what you expect, so that as they get better and more proficient at cleaning that room, they will meet your expectations. Same with employees, whether they're 1099 or W-2, they need to know what your expectations are, because I believe with all my heart that most people inherently want to do a good job.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Most people don't set out to say, I'm going to screw this guy over. They're just not. So if you tell them what your expectations are, and then follow up and make sure they're doing that and holding them accountable. I have training every month with my employees. We have a company meeting, and part of that involves training, going over procedures they've heard me talk about a million times. But at different times of the year, I go over the same ones. If we're doing absentee home care and it's going to be summer, I'm going to go over how to do absentee home care, because it's super easy to become complacent. You've seen this house 1,000 times. Yeah, I want you to treat it like it's the first time every time.
Yeah, those fresh eyes.
Yeah. So, and we have talked about swapping people around just to keep those fresh eyes, but the clients, they're not crazy about that. Some of them will only work with certain people.
Well, they do that as in places like the grocery store.
Yeah.
And that's 100% by design, because it makes us, the customers who are used to on aisle 7, it's always this, that all of a sudden it's like they change the store. It's frustrating, but what does it make us do? Discover new things that we'd never seen, because we just kind of go in and we block this stuff out. And so I think that's a cool idea, Leslie.
It drives me nuts when they reorganize the store, because I like to get in and out. I'm not, unless I'm having a day where I want to wander, I don't typically like to wander in a store. So When they move everything around, now I got to start all over again, learning the damn store.
Well, they say, and I think it's true. The only one who likes change is a baby with a wet diaper, and the rest of us would prefer not to have change. But
Except that, I'm going to say, except that the only constant.
of course, there's an except. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. The only constant in life is that it's always changing. Right? That's the only constant, which sounds like an oxymoron, I know, but everything changes all the time. And in business, it could be your target client could change, the services or products you offer could change. You may need to move into a larger location, and that location may or may not have good foot traffic if you rely on that. I mean, there's constant changes, constant checking to see if I'm doing what I need to be doing properly. And so you need to be thinking about this before you get into a mess, before chaos sets in, because it will. Chaos is always sneaky. It's like water. Water always finds a way. Chaos does too. It's always looking for a way to get into you. And so, but I have a tattoo of chaos because I believe that out of chaos, really great things can happen because it forces you to look at stuff and to fix it and make it different. It's better if you can do it proactively, but
well, it's like this whole idea of setting aside time. You talked about setting aside time to train your employees. I have a weekly meeting with my staff, and it made me start thinking like, I have a meeting with one person on my staff because she takes care of everybody else. She's my project manager, and I'm like, I probably need to do a little bit more communicating with my entire staff, so I make sure that what I might say to her does not get diluted or misinterpreted. And so, there are probably three out of the 10 that I probably communicate on a regular basis. Faisal is one of them. Gentleman who takes care of my SEO. And then I have a gentleman in Vietnam who also does editing for me. And those I tend to have a little bit more interaction with, but everybody else, she kind of runs it. And for the most part, okay. But it makes me think as we talk about this, for me, I should go back and create that opportunity to now talk to them a little bit more often, just to make sure that that message is consistent in level 1 versus level 10. It's like that old whisper. I tell you something, or you get in a circle and I tell you a secret, and by the time it gets around, it's like, what? That wasn't even close. And I want to make sure to prevent that. So set some time aside.
Yeah, and I have an office manager who handles the stuff that I used to handle. I've been able to delegate most of the routine things, which is just lovely. But I still have a once a month meeting with all of my people to keep my face there, to communicate my expectations, to tell them they're doing a good job. They want to hear from me. And you got to remember, in my industry, feedback from the clients is rare. When you're doing your job right, you never hear from anybody. You only hear from them when there's something wrong. And I hate to say that because it sounds cynical, but it's true. And then if a client finds something wrong, all of a sudden they nitpick everything else. Because I think subliminally they think, well, if this is wrong, what else is wrong? And so I try to make sure there's nothing wrong. That's what we strive for, is to make sure everything is great all the time. And we've been very successful at that. We've had a few hiccups over the years, but by and large, for the volume of clients we service, we've been really blessed to make sure that level of quality stays there. And
I think that goes right back to our opening statement, as far as, you run a business that you're always proactive. Very rarely are you reactive.
Right.
And the reason is because all the things we've talked about, making sure your staff knows their roles, what accountability looks like, the processes, the procedures, all of that stuff is in place. And so it does this right here. Peace of mind is a legitimate business ROI. We never think that in there. We always think it's a dollar and cent thing, but it really can be like, I really love my business. It's not driving me freaking bananas.
Well, yeah. And we all have days where we don't like it. I mean, everybody hits a wall every couple of years that says, why the hell am I doing this? I was going to think, I thought of another expletive, but I decided not to use it on this
Thank
podcast.
you.
Although other podcasts use it all the time, but I'm not going to. So,
I'd have to change the level of who can watch
are you
this.
going to bleep me?
Just all of a sudden, if you're 13 years or younger, you can't watch this.
Some of those kids are worse.
True, true.
But being able to know, and I every once in a while I get, so all of us hit this wall every few years that says, why am I doing this? What was I thinking? I feel that less and less as the business matures. We're at 20 years, and so I feel that less, and I have good systems and people in place. But that also gives me a peace of mind knowing that things are being done properly. Now, every once in a while, we have a new person in the office, so I've been kind of micromanaging, sending things that come back to me as this has already been handled, we already know about this, blah, 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 which A, assures me that the people that have been here a long time are still doing what they're supposed to do, and B, that the new person understands her job role and what she's supposed to do. So it's interesting, the dynamic. Even I get caught up in this micromanaging occasionally, but you want to fight that with all your work, because then you enjoy your business more. Then you don't have as many of those days where you don't question why you're doing it. You're right. You have fewer fire drills. You have fewer damage control efforts. Things don't fall through the cracks. There's just a lot of better things. I can tell you this, and I don't know if you've got a headline for this, but if your business is running well, it feels super boring, okay? Because um, there's no crisis to deal with, right? There's no last minute, I got to scramble to do something. There's very little chaos. It's just, and you almost get like, oh my gosh, this is so routine. I need something to spark me up, which is part of the reason I keep creating new products for concierge business solutions.
Just
Which
can't leave things alone.
I know. I know. Well, now I'm considering licensing executive areas. So,
Of course you are.
because I looked at the difference between franchise and licensing, and I'm going, yeah, I could do this. So maybe I'll do that. But anyway, you want to be able to trust, like the good hands. You want to trust that your business is being um, run properly by the people you have helping you. Whether it's one person, 10 people, doesn't matter. Your 10 people all have specific roles that they do, right? I'm talking to you.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
he went
No,
somewhere else. I don't
I
know
thought
where he went.
you had the tone of that like it was not a question, it was a statement, like you were going to continue
No.
on. My apologies.
I saw your eyes glaze over. So it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
she's talking again.
Uh,
No, but you have 10 people, they know what their roles are, and they do a really good job. So you don't really have to monitor them as much, especially because you have a project manager who manages them, which is great. Um, would you make more money if you didn't have a layer in between? Probably, but I happen to know that project manager also has roles that she's she, right? That
yep.
she also does. So you're getting kind of double for your effort. So, as long as everybody understands what their role is, they understand the expectations, you have the right systems in place, you have documentation in place, your business can run really, really well. People are able to make better decisions. They are stronger as a team. They can help you and anticipate. My people write WWLD. What would Leslie do all the time? And I've noticed that one of my employees who I've been mentoring for about 4 years is starting to write emails even the way I write them. And she's thinking outside of the box, which I'm thrilled about. She's now saying, like, she walked into a property the other day and there was a broken sprinkler, had a leaking faucet, and one other leak somewhere. Oh, it was a leak under the sink. And she said, we need to take care of this, and we will, but I'd like permission to go ahead and get somebody out, the plumber out to check the pressure regulator, because typically we don't see 3 different leaks on a property unless the pressure regulator is broken. And that's exactly the right way to think, because I've had that happen. That's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
So for her to come up with that without me seeing the email about the 3 leaks and saying, hey, what about the pressure regulator, I was so happy, because I thought, yes, she's got it. She understands. And I called her and told her so too. I said, you're doing such a good job. I can see that you're thinking through these things, and it's really good.
Well, the other thing is owners who can step away without panic. Like last week, you had an issue where a crown came off, and
Yes.
you had to go out of town, and it wasn't like all of a sudden you forwarded your phone calls and said we've closed down for the day. You didn't put a close sign on the window. Business ran as normal.
Yeah, I had to go to Mexico, which sounds like a really far place to go, but it's like 2 hours away. That's where my dentist is, and I had to go get the crown reinstalled, and um, I never even worried a minute about the business. I knew it would be fine. I check my email. I have a Mexico plan on my phone, so I can actually get email in Mexico. So I can keep an eye on stuff, but I rarely even have to do that. I mean, they've got me so pushed out of my own business that they do everything. And it's great, because the whole point of all of this is what? Operational independence,
Yeah.
right? I'm pushing that like it's I don't know, what am I pushing it like? I'm pushing it like it's my mantra. You need operational independence. It's what saves you. It's what making having a business makes it fun. It's what is rewarding, and the true measure of success is operational independence. It's not how much money you make. It's not how many clients you have. You can always get more of those, but being able for your business to run well without you is a huge sign that your systems are right, your documentation is right, your training is right. Everything you're doing is correct when you can walk away and it still operates.
As you say that, it makes me wonder if, like, okay, if somebody did a litmus test, or if you're a plumber, you're doing a pressure test, right? Of like, can I walk away if you're a business owner, you haven't got a job that your business is your job, that you're actually the one doing this, but pressure test and say, could I walk away for a day and nothing changes? Everything performs at the higher level. If not, then it's not a bad thing. It's why we pressure test things, to say, oh, wait a second, that particular thing, like maybe I need to firm up my processes, or maybe I need to do, something within that. I need to hire another person that does this, whatever it may be. It's an opportunity to say, oh, I can't quite do that yet. What
Yes,
is it that I need to fix? So I think I think that is a nice pressure test, if you will, litmus test.
it is. And I'm going to caution, I'm going to put a caveat on that, because all too often people have a sense of propriety about their business. They're emotionally involved. They have the hero syndrome. They want to be the person that makes all final decisions. Letting go is very, very hard. And it's probably the number one thing I work with small business owners on through coaching and our 5-day challenge is delegation and letting people do their jobs. I have one licensee who has an amazing assistant. I try to coach her, actually. Not really, but I jokingly said, do you want to come to California and work? Because she's so amazing, right? But the owner doesn't want to let her do her job because she's got a death grip on the business.
Yeah.
And she's so used to working in it instead of on it. And the assistant is like, let me do it. I can do this. I can take care of this for you. Super nice.
I have a new title for your next book.
Oh, what is it?
12 steps for letting go of your business. How to
I should
work
do
on your business instead of in your business.
I should do that. I could
The
do
12
that.
step.
Now I got something else to do. Thank you.
Leslie's 12-step guide. She'll have it done by this afternoon. She'll get on ChatGPT and say, this is what we want to do. What are the 12 steps? That could be a little handout for your 5-day. That would be interesting.
Actually, I could. That'd be really awesome. I could do
Yeah.
that. I wrote it down.
Yeah.
So I haven't finished Concierge Works yet, though. I have to finish that first.
We're trying. I'm monitoring it as we're talking about this. But
did you see my last email on that?
Oh, yes, I have.
Did you see about the API?
I saw it. No, I mean,
no, you didn't, did you?
well, I saw it. What I thought was the last one before I came online. This is a totally offline conversation, folks. Let's get back to this and say
Oh.
what we're talking about today is reactive versus proactive businesses. And really, I'm just going to go through this. So we talked about decisions get postponed when nothing is on fire, and there's some processes for that. The next one is why emergencies are expensive teachers in business. This is not the way to do this. And then, what quiet prevention looks like in a business. We went through this. And then at the end of the day, we forget about this. We think, hey, the ROI of our business is how much money we make. It could be peace of mind, because if you have all these things in place as that she has peace of mind because her business is running without her, and she can walk away knowing that, she can go to an event, or she can go to Mexico or wherever it is, Africa, and not worry about, oh my God, I've got to take care of Mrs. Smith. I better make sure. No, none of that stuff is happening. It doesn't happen by accident. It's not an overnight thing, but you have to find out, hey, am I being reactive as a business owner or proactive? And if you're feeling like, oh, I'm pretty reactive, I would recommend you watch this show a second time, or review your notes and say, okay, what parts are missing and what can I put in there? I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Leslie, this has been go ahead. Did you have something else you want to say?
No, I was just going to say that this is a topic that's pretty close to my heart, as you know, because I want to see all business owners be successful. And sometimes they just need some clarity, and sometimes they just need to be reframed a little bit. If they have one point of view and you say, yeah, but what about if you looked at it this way? And then they get excited because they see that that's not to say my way is the only way or best way, but to say that this is an option of how you could.
That's what she tells me, everybody.
Yes, sure, I do tell him, because he just doesn't listen. No, he does. He does. No, what I'm saying is that if you can just look at something, like when I was consulting, I would tell the owners of the companies that I was working for aerospace and defense companies, and they would ask me, what do I think about something? And I said, well, you can do it like this, and this is going to be the consequences, and you can do it like this, and this would be the consequences, but you're paying me to tell you the best option. And I say, this is the best option. You don't have to do it, but this is what's going to happen if you don't.
Yeah.
And most of the time they went my way, but not always. Not always.
And a little bow tie on that is, I love how my ChatGPT, because I've set it up this way, is now it doesn't give me a single answer. It'll give me option A, option B. Especially, I just finished doing a tremendous coding project, and it will say, okay, that particular error was caused by this. Now here's option A, and this is one I recommend, but here's option B, and it will tell me the positive and negatives with that. And I love that, because now it's given me some autonomy. I can still make the final decision, and I own that, right?
Yeah.
And I can see how when you were doing that in the aerospace industry, it's like, okay, I get that, but this is why I'm paying Leslie for this. She's the expert. She's seeing it from the outside, the phrase. She's not in the chaos. She sees it differently, and she's giving me the option. If I take B and she recommended A, I own that. It isn't on Leslie. So,
well, and not only that, but you got to remember that I've got 20 years in just my industry, right? I've got, if you want to get really specific, I got 30 years of consulting and training and education and helping and re-engineering people's processes. So I really feel like I'm a good one to talk to about it. I've seen about every which way you can do stuff. And so, and my goal is always to help somebody. So, I love it. I love helping them. I said, I'm full disclosure. Ask me a question, you're going to get the truth, whether you like it or you don't. So,
well, for those of you wondering about, hey, can I get more truth from Leslie? She does have a program called the 5-Day Freedom Challenge, and it's on the screen now. It's Concierge Business Solutions. There's 3 S's between the business and solutions.com/the-5-day-freedom-challenge. And if you go to that, you can sign up. It takes you to a page with a calendar on there. You can choose a time. Leslie, how many of those do you do on a weekly basis? Are you limited?
I wanted to get to 3, but I'm finding that 2 is plenty, because I give them so much. I give them recaps of every day. I give them marketing opportunities in there. I give a lot. for those 5 days. So, which I'm more than happy to do. That's the last one I did. I found her a little trinket that matches her logo to wear when she goes on networking events, and she decided to get them for all her employees because they're so cute. So, yeah, the goal is to make everybody's business better, to improve this industry as a whole, and I do those things for free. So, sign up.
Well, I want to make sure everybody understands this. This is not a group class. This is you and Leslie, 5 days, about an hour each day. And, this is all about you. It's not a sales fest. It's not the typical, okay, after 3 days, the next 2 days are selling you something. Although I have to be just straight up here. If she sees opportunities that she can provide, whether it's her product and services or someone else's that will make your business better, she's going to be full disclosure. She's going to offer that to you. And then again, it's like, it's your choice.
Right.
And she's not one of those people that, hey, she's going to say you should do this because she gets an affiliate or she gets paid for it. It's because it will make your business better. She wants to, I think everybody you've done any 5-day challenge with has become, I'm going to say you haven't been doing it that long, but has become a long-term relationship. Have you not?
For sure.
Yeah.
I've made some really good friends doing this.
Yeah.
People that I don't ever want to lose contact with because they're so smart and nice and easy to work with. I mean, and it's funny, the first day, everybody's a little hesitant and stuff. And we do a lot of fact finding on the first day and the second day. And then we start really jumping into things that opportunities and ways to streamline their business. Because by the second day, I've pretty much figured out what the problem could be and how to help them the best. And so we just expand on it from there because it is very tailored to their business. Sometimes we have to go a different direction depending on the company and what you're doing. But at the end, they all see value. And but I've got a new testimony coming your way here shortly. So yeah, it's really fun and I love it. And I would love to do it for all of our listeners.
Well, Leslie, this has been a very good program today. I really appreciate all the help today, the great information. And if you're good with it, I'm just going to take us out.
Okay.
All right. If there's one thing to take from today, it's this. Waiting doesn't save you money, time, or energy. It just delays the cost. Businesses don't usually break all at once. They break slowly, quietly, and expensively when no one's paying attention. Make sure to take care of your business. Catch it before the rush shows up on the outside. In between, make sure you stay with us on our podcast, the Twisted, Bent, and Exhausted Entrepreneur Podcast. My name is Jeff Harrison, along with my co-host,
Leslie Spoor. Be sure you share it. Share it.
Yeah, there we go. If you love it, give us a 6-star review and share it with a friend.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.